I hesitated at the basement door, hand hovering over the padlock. My brain was screaming, this can't be happening, but curiosity won over. I had to know what Karen had been hiding, or worse, what she'd been doing in my house. "Sir, maybe we shouldn't," the officer said, but I could see the hesitation in his eyes. He knew how absurd this situation already was. I shook my head. "No, you need to see this." I bent down, inspecting the lock, brand new, expensive. Whoever installed it knew what they were doing. Whoever was living here didn't want anyone finding out what was down there. Karen, from across the room, muttered something under her breath. I couldn't hear it, but the way she tensed, her coffee cup shaking in her hand, told me she knew exactly what I was thinking. The officer exchanged a look with his partner, then whispered, "We might need a warrant if." "Forget the warrant," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "This is my property, every inch of it. That door belongs to me." I reached for my keys and tried the padlock, but of course it was one of those high-security models. No key, no combination. Whoever she was, Karen had planned this in advance. "Funny," she said, finally breaking her silence. "I thought you'd never find out." I froze. The smirk on her face was infuriating, but more than that, it was chilling. She's been here this whole time, I realized. Every dinner she'd cooked, every bag she'd unpacked, all in my mansion. "You what?" I managed, my voice trembling between anger and disbelief. "Living," she said simply, as if it were the most normal thing in the world. "Keeping it warm, making sure the place didn't fall apart while you were gone. You should be grateful." "Grateful?" I laughed, though it came out as more of a strangled snort. "Grateful that you squatted in my home, turned off my cameras, and called the cops on me? Sure, Karen, that's exactly what I should feel." She tilted her head, pretending to think. "Well, I mean, technically, the board voted for me to oversee the property after the so-called abandonment." I clenched my fists. "Abandonment? I was on business trips. You don't get to just move in when I'm out of town." Karen shrugged. "Semantics, rules are rules, honey." I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. I couldn't let her see how rattled I really was. Not yet. There had to be a way to get control back, to reclaim my own house without turning this into a full-blown HOA nightmare. The officer cleared his throat, interrupting our standoff. "Ma'am, we're not going to decide ownership right now. Sir, I think you should stay put while we verify your claim. And ma'am," he looked at Karen sternly, "you need to leave the premises." Her smug smile faltered. For the first time, she looked worried. Not scared, just irritated that the rules weren't bending in her favor. I walked past her to the basement door again, heart pounding. My mind raced with possibilities. What if she'd taken more than just furniture, documents, jewelry, something else that could make this mess even worse? "Officer," I said, "before you even think about leaving, you need to see what's behind this door. Whatever's down there, it's part of my home and she's been hiding it." Karen's face paled slightly. She took a step back, her coffee now completely forgotten. I took a deep breath, trying to summon the courage to confront the unknown. Whatever awaited me in that basement, I knew one thing: this was only the beginning. As the officer reached for his radio to call for backup, Karen muttered under her breath, "You have no idea what you've just walked into." And that was the last thing she said before I turned back to the locked door, realizing this night was about to get a lot more complicated. The padlock glinted under the hallway light, mocking me. I stared at it, hand shaking slightly. My stomach churned, not from fear exactly, but from the surreal reality. Karen had been living in my house the entire time, every day, every corner. And now, behind that basement door was the evidence of just how deep this had gone. The officer reached into his pocket, glancing at me. "Sir, legally we need to be careful. We can't just force entry." I cut him off. "Listen, this is my property. I built this house, paid for every square inch. That lock is mine to open, and if she's hiding something, we need to see it before she destroys or removes it." Karen's smug expression had faded completely. She looked like a cornered cat, the kind that hisses but knows escape is impossible. "You don't know what's down there. You're going to regret opening it," she said, voice trembling just enough to betray her confidence. I ignored her. There was no time for theatrics. I pulled out my phone, calling the locksmith I trusted. "I need someone here fast, and yeah, it's an emergency." While we waited, Karen hovered nearby, packing the living room like she was planning her next move. "You think you can just come home and take over?" The board voted. "Board voted? The board didn't vote for you to steal my house, Karen," I snapped. The first sirens of backup arrived in the distance. Neighbors must have called 911 after seeing the police cars and my yelling. Karen paled again, realizing she couldn't manipulate this scene any longer. 20 minutes later, the locksmith arrived. He looked at the padlock, then at me. "You own the property, right?" "Yes," I said, "and she's been living here without permission." He nodded. "Then I can open it legally, shouldn't take long." As he worked, Karen's eyes darted nervously. I noticed her glance toward the kitchen, then the hallway, anywhere she might have stashed something. My pulse quickened. This wasn't just about furniture or rugs, it was something more. I could feel it. Click, the padlock finally gave way. I lifted the door. The basement was dark, except for a single lamp Karen must have set up for herself. My heart skipped. The first thing I noticed were boxes, dozens of them labeled in neat, precise handwriting. But the labels weren't typical. HOA documents, board secrets, neighbors' complaints. She had been hoarding information. My breath caught. She wasn't just squatting, she was spying, collecting dirt. Every complaint, every small feud in the neighborhood, even things that had nothing to do with the house. She weaponized it. And then I saw it, a small safe tucked into the corner. Unlike the boxes, it was locked. She must have been guarding it fiercely. My mind raced. If this safe held financial records, deeds, or evidence of illegal activity, I could finally turn the tables. Karen's voice broke my thoughts. "That safe, you don't want to touch it." I stepped closer, ignoring her. "Try me." She took a step back. "You have no idea what's inside. Opening it could ruin lives, including yours." I paused, feeling the weight of her words. But one thing was clear, she had already ruined mine by living here, calling the cops, and taking control. I wasn't going to back down. The officer finally stepped in. "Sir, you can open it, but be careful. Ma'am, you need to step back." Karen glared, but there was no fight left in her. Her confidence had vanished, replaced by fear, the first crack in her perfect act. I knelt in front of the safe, heart racing. I didn't have the combination, but I had another tool, my phone. A quick call to my personal security company, and within minutes, the safe clicked open. Inside were files, documents, even a flash drive, and on top of everything else, personal items. Expensive jewelry, photos of my home's interior, receipts that made it clear Karen had been living lavishly in my mansion, spending my money, and pretending it was all part of HOA maintenance. My hands trembled as I flipped through the papers. She had planned this for months, maybe years. Every detail of my absence documented, every loophole exploited, every step she'd taken to claim ownership while making it look like she was doing good work. Karen's face went pale. She tried to cover her mouth, like this revelation had caught her completely off guard. You had no right," I said, my voice shaking but controlled. All of this is mine. You've been living in my house, using my things, spying on me. You can't just get away with it." She whispered almost to herself, "You don't understand. You have no idea what's coming." I narrowed my eyes. "Try me, Karen, because I think the only thing coming is justice, and it starts now." The officer stepped forward. "Ma'am, I think it's time you go. We'll handle the rest." She didn't argue. Instead, she gathered a few items, threw a sharp glance at the basement, and muttered, "This isn't over." I closed the basement door slowly, breathing hard. The truth was out. Karen had been living in my mansion, manipulating everyone and weaponizing the HOA rules for her own gain. But this was just the beginning. I had proof now. And the next step, making sure she paid for every second of trespass, every lie, every manipulation. The next morning, I couldn't sleep. Every thought was consumed with Karen, her audacity, her plans, and the basement full of secrets she thought she could hide. I sat in my living room, nursing a strong coffee, replaying every moment from the previous night. My mansion felt mine again, yet not fully. Every corner seemed tainted by her presence, every rug, every cushion a reminder that she had lived here like a phantom, controlling my space in my absence. I knew what I had to do. It was time to confront the HOA board, not just Karen, all of them. The people who had given her the keys, literally and figuratively, to my life for months. I scheduled a meeting, not at their office, not at the clubhouse. I insisted it be at my house, my home, my rules. And when they arrived, I made sure the police were there as well. The first to arrive was Karen, of course. Her expression was carefully neutral, but the slight twitch in her jaw betrayed her anxiety. Behind her, 3 board members shuffled in, clutching papers and looking like they'd been summoned to a firing squad. "Good morning," I said, standing at the entrance to the living room. "Welcome to my home. I hope you find it familiar." Karen's lips pressed into a thin line. "I don't see why this is necessary," she said. "The board already voted." "Voted?" I interrupted. "You mean the vote you twisted to justify moving into my house, that vote?" Her face paled slightly, but she kept her composure. Technically, the property was unoccupied. Rules are rules. I gestured to the basement door. Let me show you what happens when rules are interpreted to suit personal gain. I opened the door slowly, and the board members' eyes widened as they saw the boxes, the safe, the files, and the flash drives. Karen's confident posture faltered, and she took a half step back. "This," I said, letting my voice echo in the room, "is what you allowed. A board member living in someone else's house, using their property, spying, hoarding information, misusing HOA authority, and making it look like it's all for the neighborhood." One board member, a portly man in glasses, coughed nervously. I didn't know it was this bad." "Of course you didn't," I said. "Karen covered it well. She knows how to manipulate people, how to twist rules, how to pretend she's doing good while violating every ethical boundary in existence." Karen's voice cracked. You're exaggerating." I held up one of her files. "Exaggerating? You mean this file detailing every neighbor's complaints and private information? Or this one, receipts showing she's been spending my money on herself?" The board members shuffled uneasily. Karen's face went from shock to panic. I thought I was protecting the property." "Protecting it by living in it, using it as your personal mansion, and calling the cops on the rightful owner?" I snapped. "Do you call that protecting?" One of the officers stepped forward, holding a folder. "We've documented her trespassing, and she's been reported for misuse of HOA power. Any further attempts to enter the property or intimidate the homeowner will result in legal consequences." Karen's hands trembled slightly. You can't do this." I leaned forward. "Oh, I already am, and this is only the beginning. You see, the law is on my side. I have proof of everything. Cameras she tried to disable, files she hoarded, police reports from last night. I've got it all." The board members exchanged worried glances. Karen's face went pale as the reality sank in. She had been exposed, and there was no backing out. "You'll regret this," she spat finally, but there was no fire behind the words, only desperation. I smiled, but it wasn't a warm smile. It was the smile of someone who'd regained control, someone who had the upper hand. "Regret isn't my problem. You lived in my house. You lied, you manipulated, and you used your power to harass me. The only thing I regret is that I didn't catch you sooner." The officers motioned for Karen to leave. She hesitated, glancing at the board members. They too avoided eye contact, realizing how badly they'd misjudged the situation. Karen finally stormed out, muttering threats under her breath. The sound of her heels fatting down the driveway felt like the closing of a dark chapter. I closed the front door and leaned against it, breathing heavily, letting the adrenaline drain slowly. For the first time in months, my house felt like mine again. But I knew one thing: Karen wouldn't stop, not entirely. She might try to manipulate the HOA from the outside, spread lies, or even try legal tricks to regain control. And that meant I had to be smarter, faster, ready for her next move. The basement door beckoned. The safe, the boxes, the files, every secret she'd hidden. I knew what I had to do next, not just reclaim my house, but secure it, uncover every scheme she'd planned, and make sure there was no chance she could ever return. This wasn't over, not by a long shot, but for the first time I felt a glimmer of hope. Karen had underestimated me, and now it was my turn to take control. The basement had become my war room. Boxes of files, folders stuffed with HOA documents, and that small safe now opened lay before me like a puzzle begging to be solved. Each paper, each receipt, each photo was a piece of Karen's audacious plan, and the more I looked, the more shocking it became. I started with the flash drive. Plugging it into my laptop, I found hundreds of photos and videos. Karen had been documenting everything: my house, my belongings, even my neighbors' homes. Some were routine maintenance photos she claimed to take for the HOA, but others were clearly her way of asserting ownership. She'd photographed my personal files, my safe, even notes I'd left on my kitchen counter. It was invasive, meticulous, and disturbingly clever. The folders in the basement revealed more. One was labeled financials, bank statements, HOA budgets, even invoices for work she'd claimed the board authorized. A lot of it was normal upkeep, but some of it was clearly personal: furniture, decorations, groceries. Expenses that should have been mine, quietly siphoned into her control. And then there were the complaints. Hundreds of neighbor complaints, neatly categorized with notes about who had conflicts, who disliked whom, and even personal grudges. Karen had weaponized the HOA entirely, not just to live in my house, but to wield influence over everyone in the neighborhood. I felt a mix of anger and disbelief. How had no one noticed this sooner? How had she managed to manipulate not just the board, but the very system meant to protect homeowners? The officer from the previous night stopped by to check in. "Need help cataloging everything?" he asked. I nodded. Yes, I want to make sure every document, every photo is preserved. This isn't just about my house, it's about exposing how far she went. While we worked, my phone started blowing up with texts and calls. Neighbors had heard about the confrontation, some from the police presence, others from Karen herself trying to spin the story. Many were angry, some confused, but as they started asking questions, a pattern emerged. Karen hadn't just been living in my house, she'd been influencing everyone, pushing her agenda quietly while pretending to maintain order. By midday, I had enough evidence to take the next step. I drafted a simple plan: meet with the HOA board officially, present the proof, and make sure Karen was removed from every position of power permanently. But before I could act, a knock at the front door startled me. It was Mr. Simmons, a longtime neighbor and former board member. "I saw what happened yesterday," he said. I think you need to show everyone what she's been doing. People need to see the truth." I invited him in and quickly explained what I had uncovered. His eyes widened at the documents, the photos, and the flash drive. This is insane. She's been manipulating everything for months. We all thought she was helping, but this," he shook his head, "this is criminal." The weight of that statement hit me. Karen wasn't just arrogant, she was dangerous. And she had a plan for every possible move I could make. I realized this would be more than a confrontation. It would be a battle for every inch of control she'd stolen. I decided to make my move that evening during the board meeting. The HOA had scheduled a monthly meeting at the local community hall. Normally, Karen would have led it, controlling the narrative. But tonight, I had evidence, the police, and a handful of brave neighbors ready to support the truth. As I walked into the hall, the tension was electric. Karen was already there, sitting at the head of the table, projecting calm like nothing was wrong. The board members flanked her, uncomfortable but still reluctant to challenge her. I set my laptop on the table, opened the flash drive, and connected it to the projector. Instantly, images filled the screen: Karen in my living room, my kitchen, my bedroom. Receipts for items she'd purchased using HOA funds. Screenshots of emails where she manipulated board decisions. Every person in the room could see it. Gasps filled the hall. Karen's face went pale. She tried to speak, to dismiss the evidence, but no one listened. This was the truth, unfiltered and undeniable. I leaned forward, voice steady but dripping with intensity. "This is what happens when one person abuses power under the guise of authority. Karen has trespassed, manipulated, and lied. She's controlled not just my house, but this entire neighborhood, and it stops today." One by one, neighbors stood up, voices shaking with emotion but united in support. The board had no choice. They formally removed Karen from every position of power. Her attempts to argue, to twist the story, fell flat against the mountain of evidence. She stormed out of the hall, muttering threats under her breath, but no one followed. She was done. The room was silent for a moment, then erupted into murmurs of relief. For the first time in months, I felt a sense of control. My home was mine again, but deep down, I knew this wasn't just about the board meeting. Karen was cunning, and she wouldn't give up entirely. There were still loose ends, secrets, and schemes that I hadn't uncovered yet. The suspense wasn't over, it was only deepening. Even after the board meeting, I couldn't shake the feeling that Karen wasn't finished. She may have been stripped of her HOA authority, but her arrogance and obsession with control ran deeper than anyone could imagine. And I had a sinking suspicion she was already plotting her next move. The following morning, I arrived at my mansion to find a curious sight: my front gate slightly ajar. At first, I thought I might have forgotten to lock it, but the scratches on the metal hinge told a different story. Someone had been here, someone with intent. I called the police immediately. Within minutes, officers were on the property, scanning the grounds. Nothing seemed stolen, but there were clear signs of tampering. The basement window had scratch marks along the frame, and my security cameras had been disabled again. "She's bold," one of the officers muttered, examining the broken cable. "Either she's desperate or she thinks she's untouchable." I clenched my jaw. Karen was testing boundaries, seeing how far she could push before I reacted. She wasn't done with my house, she wasn't done with me. I spent the next few hours fortifying the mansion. New locks, reinforced doors, motion sensors, and cameras, everything high-tech. Every inch of my property had to be secure, but even with all that, the thought gnawed at me. She had knowledge of my routines, my weaknesses, and my neighbors. That afternoon, a package arrived. No return address. I tore it open carefully. Inside was a single envelope with a note in Karen's unmistakable handwriting. "You may have won the HOA battle, but the war isn't over. Think you're safe? Think again." Attached to the note was a small USB drive. I didn't even plug it in. The message was clear: she was daring me, taunting me, and the very fact she had been inside my house again confirmed it. She was watching, waiting, and planning. I sat down with the police officer assigned to my case. "She's escalating," I said. "I need legal protection, restraining orders, everything. She can't be allowed near my property or neighbors again." He nodded. "We've already documented everything from the basement, the meeting, and her attempted break-in. We'll file for a permanent injunction. Any further trespass, she's done for legally, criminally." Even with legal measures, I knew this was as much a psychological battle as a legal one. Karen thrived on control, on fear, on chaos. I had to anticipate her every move, outsmart her before she struck again. That night I couldn't sleep. I sat in my office, laptop open, going through the evidence again. Every receipt, every photo, every email from Karen was a reminder of her obsession. And yet, in that overwhelming mountain of proof, I began to piece together a plan not just to protect my home, but to finally end her manipulation entirely. I would expose everything publicly. The neighbors, the board, the community, everyone needed to see how Karen had acted under the guise of authority. And I had the perfect platform: social media, local HOA forums, and the neighbors who had already witnessed her deceit firsthand. The next morning, I started contacting the neighbors individually. Reactions varied: shock, anger, disbelief, but the consistent theme was outrage. Everyone wanted to know why no one had stopped her sooner, and now, armed with evidence, I could finally tell the truth without question. By evening, word had spread. A few neighbors even offered to assist with monitoring the mansion, keeping an eye out for any suspicious activity. It was surreal, my own community rallying behind me against someone who had manipulated them for months. But amidst the relief, a shadow of fear lingered. Karen's threats weren't empty. She was bold, obsessive, and unpredictable. I had taken back my house, but I couldn't relax. Any misstep, any lapse in vigilance could give her the upper hand once again. And then, just when I thought the night would pass uneventfully, I received another call, this time from a neighbor on the far side of the lake. Their voice trembled. "Something happening at your property, Karen's back." My heart stopped. The battle wasn't over, not by a long shot. And as I raced toward the mansion, adrenaline pumping, I realized one thing with absolute certainty. This time, I wouldn't just defend my home. I would end her reign once and for all. I pulled up to the mansion, heart pounding, and immediately saw the headlights cutting across my driveway. Karen's black SUV was there, engine running like she had planned her return perfectly. My gut twisted. She hadn't given up, she had escalated. The police were already on site, waiting discreetly behind trees and hedges. I'd set the stage for the confrontation, every entrance monitored, every blind spot covered. This time, she wouldn't get the drop on me. I stepped out, keeping calm, letting my presence be known. Karen froze mid-step as she saw me. Her smug smile faltered, replaced by something sharper: anger, panic, desperation. "Back so soon?" I called, my voice steady but cold. "I wasn't expecting another visit from you." You can't stop me," she hissed, slamming her SUV door. "The house, the HOA, it's mine. I've been protecting it." I raised an eyebrow. Protecting it by trespassing, by spying, by stealing my things? Funny definition of protecting. She tried to advance toward the front door, but the police stepped forward, blocking her path. Karen's hands flailed in protest. "I can't leave, you don't understand. The law is on my side." I shook my head. "The law is very clear: trespassing, harassment, misuse of HOA authority, you're done permanently." Her eyes darted nervously around, searching for an escape, for leverage. I noticed her hand twitch toward the basement. She must have been thinking about what she left behind, that safe, those boxes. She wanted them back, wanted control over the evidence. I made my move. "Step back, Karen, one step closer and we'll take immediate action. You've already been warned." Her lip curled, and then she did something I hadn't anticipated. She bolted toward the basement door, sprinting to reach her treasure. I'd anticipated this, of course. The police had already barricaded it from inside, hidden behind the hallway wall. She slammed into it, staggering back, breathless. The officer stepped forward. "I warned you, step away from the door." Karen spun, wild-eyed, and tried to push past him. I stepped closer, voice calm but deadly serious. "Karen, it ends now, not tomorrow, not next week, here today." Her gaze flicked toward the mansion, then the driveway, then the surrounding woods, like she was calculating an escape. But there was none. Every exit monitored, every move anticipated. Her empire of control had crumbled in one swift series of actions. "You don't get it," she shouted, almost pleading now. "I've done what the HOA wanted, you can't." I cut her off. No, you've done what you wanted, you abused your power, you lied, you lived in my house, and now you're done. The police moved in, gently but firmly escorting her toward the squad car. She struggled, screamed, and tried to talk over them, but no one listened. Her empire, built on manipulation and deceit, was crumbling in front of her. I watched, feeling a strange mixture of triumph and disbelief. She had been bold, cunning, and relentless, but even the cleverest schemes can't withstand preparation, evidence, and resolve. When she was finally in the car, shouting threats and promises of revenge, I let out a deep breath. The adrenaline faded, replaced by clarity. The mansion was mine again, truly mine, and every move she could make had been anticipated. I returned inside, checking the basement, the safe, every box. Everything was secure. The evidence against her was intact: photos, videos, documents, a complete record of her trespass, abuse, and manipulation. Neighbors began arriving, cautiously at first, then with cautious smiles. They had witnessed the drama unfold, and the relief was palpable. Karen's reign of terror over the HOA and my property was over. But even in that victory, I knew better than to relax completely. People like Karen don't just disappear. They wait, they plot, they hope for another opening, and I needed to make sure there wasn't one. That night I walked through the mansion slowly, deliberately. Every lock checked, every window secured, every camera online. My house wasn't just restored, it was fortified. And more importantly, my story was documented, my proof undeniable. Karen might have been bold enough to live in my mansion, to call the cops on me, to manipulate everyone around her. But one thing she underestimated was my resolve. One thing she didn't anticipate was my planning, my preparation, my ability to turn her schemes against her. And that meant the final victory, the part where she couldn't threaten, harass, or manipulate anyone ever again, was closer than ever. As I sat on the porch, watching the sunset over the lake, I realized something. The suspense, the fear, the adrenaline, it had all been worth it. Not for revenge, but for justice, for reclaiming what was mine, and for proving, in a way Karen never could, that no amount of manipulation can withstand the truth. The morning after Karen's failed break-in, I thought the nightmare might finally be over. The mansion was secured, the evidence cataloged, and the neighbors on alert, but deep down I knew her type. People like Karen don't quit, they escalate, they lash out, and she was nothing if not relentless. Sure enough, that afternoon, I received an official-looking email from the HOA board, supposedly signed by Karen herself. Notice of ownership challenge and immediate eviction request. My stomach dropped. Even though I had proof, even though the police had documented her trespasses, the message was clear. She was trying to manipulate the system one last time, using every legal loophole she could find. I forwarded the email to my attorney immediately. "This is a desperate play," I said, packing. "She's trying to reverse everything, make it look legitimate, but we've got the proof. Every transaction, every document, every photo, she doesn't stand a chance." The attorney agreed. "Legally, she's done, but psychologically, she's trying to provoke you, to make you react in a way that could compromise your position. Don't engage emotionally." I nodded, though it was easier said than done. Karen had been testing me for months, pushing boundaries, creating chaos. Now she was trying the same trick, this time with the HOA's paperwork as her weapon. A few hours later, I heard a commotion outside. I looked through the window and saw Karen standing at the edge of my driveway, waving the email printouts like flags of war. Behind her, a small crowd had gathered: neighbors, curious onlookers, some clearly swayed by her theatrics. I grabbed my phone, called the police, and stepped outside. Karen froze when she saw me, but quickly recovered. "You think you can ignore me?" she shouted. "I have legal documents now. This house, it belongs to me." I kept my voice calm, but my eyes never left hers. "You can shout, you can wave papers, you can even gather a crowd, but your actions, your trespasses, your lies, they're all documented. Every claim you make is invalid." She tried a move I hadn't expected. She stepped toward the crowd, pointing to me. "He's lying, he's trying to take control illegally. This isn't safe. The neighborhood deserves to know the truth." I realized her plan immediately. She wasn't just trying to reclaim the house. She wanted public chaos, doubt, and fear, a smear campaign to make me seem unstable or dishonest. It was her last-ditch psychological attack. I raised my hands, letting the calm mask my fury. "Neighbors, I understand your concern, but the truth is simple. This is my home. Karen has trespassed, lived here without permission, and attempted to manipulate the HOA. The evidence is public, documented, and undeniable. Don't be fooled by theatrics." Some in the crowd murmured, uncertainty in their voices. Karen's smile faltered, her confidence relied on fear and confusion, and now the tide was turning. Then I did something she didn't anticipate. I walked slowly to the center of the driveway and held up the USB drive with all her evidence of trespassing, photos, and illegal activity. "Here's the truth," I said. "Every lie she's told, every step she's taken to control this house and manipulate the HOA, all here. Anyone can see it. You can verify it yourself." A neighbor gasped, taking the drive and plugging it into their phone. Another nodded, eyes wide, clearly realizing Karen had been manipulating them all along. Karen's face went pale. She stammered, You can't, that's private, that's confidential." I shook my head. "No, what's confidential is irrelevant when it's used to commit fraud and trespass. You've been exposed, Karen, every manipulation, every illegal move, every attempt to claim what isn't yours, gone. The law, the neighbors, the evidence, all against you." The crowd began to disperse, murmuring to each other, shaking their heads at Karen. Her last desperate attempt at intimidation had failed completely. The power she had thought she wielded was evaporating before her eyes. The police stepped in. "Ma'am, you're officially being cited for trespassing and harassment. Any further attempts to approach this property or intimidate the homeowner will result in immediate arrest." Karen's shoulders slumped. The fire in her eyes was gone, replaced with disbelief and fury. She tried one last weak threat, muttering, "This isn't over." I smiled faintly. "It is over, Karen, for everyone involved, for the HOA, for the neighborhood, and for me." As she was escorted away, I felt a wave of relief. The mansion was finally secure. The neighbors knew the truth. And Karen, the woman who had called cops on me, lived in my house and tried to manipulate an entire community, was powerless. I returned inside, sat in my favorite chair, and let the tension drain away. Months of chaos, suspense, and fear had culminated in this moment. My home was mine again, truly, and the nightmare that had invaded every corner of my life was finally over. But even in that quiet, I smiled to myself. Karen had underestimated me at every turn. She had relied on fear, manipulation, and deception, and in the end, it had been her undoing. The morning after Karen's final failed attempt, the mansion felt different. For the first time in months, it wasn't tense, uneasy, or haunted by her presence. The locks clicked shut securely, the cameras monitored every angle, and the evidence, every file, photo, and recording was safely documented. My home was mine again. Neighbors began stopping by, some cautiously, some with shy smiles. They brought flowers, small gifts, and words of encouragement. The same people who had once been manipulated, worried, or confused by Karen's schemes now looked at me with gratitude and relief. I realized just how far her influence had reached. For months, she had created fear, suspicion, and doubt, and now, finally, all that had vanished. The HOA board, shaken but wiser, convened to review Karen's actions and officially remove her from all positions of authority. They issued a formal apology to me and the neighborhood, acknowledging the oversight and the damage she had caused. I attended the meeting quietly, letting them handle the formalities. Seeing Karen's name officially stricken from the records was satisfying, justice in black and white. Even the police reached out to confirm that her trespassing citations and harassment reports were complete. Karen now faced legal consequences if she attempted to approach the property or intimidate anyone again. No more warnings, no more threats. The law was firmly on my side. I walked through the mansion slowly, taking in each room. Every piece of furniture, every decoration, every corner that had been tainted by her presence felt restored to me. But I didn't just feel relief, I felt a quiet triumph. Months of chaos, suspense, and psychological warfare had ended, and I had not only survived but prevailed. That afternoon, I sat on the porch overlooking the lake, coffee in hand, watching the sun reflect on the water. The stillness was almost surreal. For so long, Karen's shadow had loomed over my property and my peace of mind. Now it was gone, and in its place was calm and a sense of closure I hadn't thought possible. My phone buzzed, a text from a neighbor. "Thank you for standing up. You saved all of us from her manipulation." I smiled. It wasn't just about reclaiming my home, it was about restoring trust, truth, and order to the community. But there was one final step. I decided to hold an informal gathering at the mansion, inviting the neighbors to see the restored home and to reinforce the sense of security that Karen had tried so hard to undermine. Everyone arrived cautiously, curious but relieved. They laughed, shared stories, and marveled at how much evidence Karen had accumulated. The basement files, the flash drives, even the safe, all displayed like a cautionary exhibit, reminded everyone how close we had come to chaos. Karen, of course, wasn't there. She had been served with restraining orders and legal notices preventing her from attending any community events. That knowledge brought a smile to my face. She had tried to control everything, but in the end, her obsession had been her undoing. As the evening wound down, I walked back through the mansion alone. The house was quiet, peaceful. Every shadow, every echo reminded me not just of Karen's schemes, but of my perseverance. She had called the cops, lived in my home, and tried to manipulate an entire neighborhood. Yet here I was, standing victorious with my home, my peace, and my dignity intact. I sat in the living room, looking at the basement door one last time. Behind it were the secrets that had fueled her power, all contained, all documented. I realized something important: vigilance and preparation were key. Karen had relied on deception, fear, and the element of surprise. But with proof, calm strategy, and patience, even the most audacious schemes could be defeated. That night, as I locked the doors and dimmed the lights, I felt a sense of finality. Karen's shadow no longer loomed over my mansion. The neighborhood was safe from her manipulations. The HOA was no longer under her control, and I had reclaimed every ounce of my life that she had tried to steal. The suspense, the fear, and the drama had been intense, but in the end, justice had prevailed. Karen's arrogance and manipulation had met the immovable force of truth and preparation. And as I finally sat back, sipping my coffee, listening to the quiet rustle of leaves outside, I realized something else. This story wasn't just about my home. It was about standing up, taking control, and showing that no amount of deception, audacity, or obsession could ever overpower the truth or the homeowner determined to defend it. For months, Karen had called the cops, lived in my mansion, and tried to manipulate an entire community. But in the end, she had failed. The mansion, the neighborhood, and my peace of mind were finally restored, and for the first time in a long time, I could breathe. Every HOA has a story on HOA Headaches. You'll hear the ones they tried to bury. Subscribe today.